Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Royal Nerd Gaming. I am your host, the Royal Nerd, and it's time to rank some more variants because we are way off schedule. Yes, I was already behind a week and a half ago when I released my last ranking variants video, and then I missed a whole week because I had some family come over to visit, and I had a big project due at one of my jobs, and I lost the other job, so I mean, if anything, that gives me more time. It's been a weird week for me, but hey, I'm back, and I'm ready to go. So we gotta pick up where we left off with the last card of last season, which is Sasquatch. So we're gonna start on Sasquatch. Sound good? So here's my thing about Sasquatch. What? Where did they find this guy? What corner of Marvel did they pull this guy out of? I've never heard of this character, but sure, why not? From a quick Google search, looks like this was some professor who was experimenting with gamma radiation. It's always gamma radiation. Gamma radiation just equates to, will turn you into big monster. And that's exactly what happened here. Instead of the Hulk, we get Sasquatch. Well, he came up with the name Sasquatch because he's like, whoa, I look kind of like a Sasquatch, and that's wrong, because this is way more like a Yeti or an abominable snowman. Sasquatch is another term for Bigfoot, who I feel like is pretty universally like brown fur, although I think maybe sometimes this character is depicted with brown fur, but in this case, it's all white fur, and so I feel like the name Sasquatch is not as applicable. I don't know, it just feels like a weird oversight, but sure, this is Sasquatch now. I also don't love the texture of his fur. It feels inconsistent, like the head is super hairy, and the arms, but then the chest is like bare, and then where his like pants start, he's got a little bit of fur, and then back to like bare knees. I don't know, it just feels patchy and kind of odd. And because of how furry his head is, I feel like we're losing the facial features a lot. They just don't stand out at all, even with those glowing blue eyes. Overall, this particular portrayal of him it's really just fine to me. So I'm gonna give Sasquatch's base card a C tier. Then we have Alberto Del Lago's Sasquatch variant, and this is way better. I mean, first and foremost, the fur texture feels way more consistent throughout, and just looks better. I firmly believe that this is a creature just covered in fur, not just like patchy hair parts. And you can really appreciate the angry, growling, like creature-like face because it stands out better amongst the much more consistent fur texture. The background here, a lot prettier. It still feels like an icy environment, which is great if that's what they're going for, but with the reds and the blues of the sky, they're a little bit brighter, they stand out a little bit more, and really catch your eye. Overall, this thing just looks like a big white gorilla, which is what I feel like Sasquatch is, right? Like that's the vibe we're going for, and in this case, nailed it. Unfortunately, it was in the Spotlight cache, and that was weeks ago, because I'm way behind, so guess I'm stuck with the base card. But yeah, if this variant comes back into Spotlight caches, I might try to pick it up, so I'm gonna give it an S tier. And that's it for Sasquatch. We're caught up on last season. Now we gotta catch up on this season. Yeah, I know, my weekly release schedule has been thrown off entirely, so to amend that, we're gonna spend the rest of today's video just ranking all the new cards and their variants from this season. I'm gonna be ahead of the game for once in my life. I'm gonna be caught up and then some. And then, the next variant review video I release can just be focusing on old cards. And that way I can get a good balance of looking at some old cards and some new cards. So, let's see how this goes. Let's kick it off with the Season Pass card Gilgamesh, the first of the Eternals, and he's the big strong one, is the vibe I'm getting. I mean, I don't know a lot about the Eternals, but I get the general idea, and he's the big strong one. I mean, just look at him. His powers are clearly focused around his hands, you know, all big punches and strength, and he's made this giant crater in the earth. Plus, he's just got a very earthy color scheme. I like it. I think the green and the bronze go pretty nicely together, and then the engravings in the bronze parts of the armor are very pretty. And overall, he just feels like a very solid character. It all stands out pretty nicely against this sort of gray background and this crater he's made. We've really got a nice highlight piece where the gold powers are glowing around his fists. I mean, you really get the idea that he's the big strong one, you know? He's gonna punch people really hard. I bet he's really good at that. This is a solid base card, a very solid base card. Like, it feels tangibly solid, with good colors and a fun pose, and nothing too special about it, but hey, I look at it and I'm like, I think I get the general idea of this character, and that's what I'm looking for, so I'm gonna give it a high B tier. Then we have Gilgamesh's casual variant, and this is new. Most of the new cards this season have at least one variant outside of their Spotlight variant, and for all of them, it is the casual variant. I gotta be honest, the casual aesthetic just feels kinda plain to me. Seeing characters in a casual art style can be fun. I'm thinking of Maria Hill's casual variant, where she's twirling her hair and eating a cheeseburger. That one's great. Because these particular casual variants have all been done in the same colors and art style as their base cards, they just feel like more plain versions of those characters. I mean, these are superheroes we're talking about. What makes them cool is their shiny powers and their bright suits, and we're taking that away from them to put them in an everyday situation. Now, it can be fun, don't get me wrong. I think the funnest part of this variant is that he's, like, baking a pie. That's cute. He's got a kiss the chef apron on. I definitely like some details about it, but everything else just feels less cool to look at. The background is somehow even less interesting than the first variant. It's more browny, just rocky colors now. I feel like if the background here was a bit brighter, a little bit more interesting, combined with the fact that he's doing something silly and fun, like baking a pie, then I might like this variant a little bit more. But as it is, it's just not really that much more captivating than the base card, so I don't see that I would actually spend, like, the gold to buy it, especially when you're getting a really cool Gilgamesh variant in the season pass. So yeah, this one, it's just fine to me. It's just different. It's a different look at this character in a different aesthetic, doing something kind of silly, you know? If you like that funny sort of setting, then maybe you'll like this variant, but as for me, I don't think it's worth the gold, so I'm gonna give it a B tier as well, but like a slightly lower B tier than the base card. Now, at the end of the season pass, you get Francesco Tomaselli's Gilgamesh variant, and this is like quintessential cool superhero stuff. This is exactly what I was looking for. I mean, he's literally in the superhero landing pose, punching into the ground, probably making a crater as he lands. I mean, him especially. Plus, you got fire and explosions going off in the background, smoke billowing into the air. This is classic superhero stuff. And his outfit feels a little bit more streamlined here. I think I like this version of it better than the base card. I like the base card, but here, the greens just really all flow together, and even though it's more shadowed, it still stands out really nicely because it's against this orange and red background, and you know, green and red, complementary colors. Art. Something else that I kind of like, and might be a little bit hit or miss for some people, but he feels older in this variant. Something about the shape of his face and maybe the wrinkles, they're very subtle. He doesn't look old, but he just looks a little bit more mature than in his base card or the other variant, and I think that kind of fits, you know? I mean, the Eternals, these kind of like ancient beings, they have a little bit of age on them, right? I'm really not clear on how the whole Eternals thing works, but it just feels fitting to me. Something else that Francesco Tomaselli does that's very interesting is that all of his characters in his variants have this sort of thin white outline around them. I feel like usually characters are just outlined in black, but here, outside of the black outline, is this thin white line. If you look really closely, you can see it, and all of the variants that he does is gonna have that. And I think that it helps the character stand out. I think it's an interesting little effect, but I think there are definitely a couple variants where it does not work as well. Here, I think it's fine. I think it emphasizes him a little bit, and it's subtle enough that I barely notice it. So, thumbs up from me. This is definitely my favorite Gilgamesh variant in the game right now, and that's great, because you get it at the end of the Season Pass. And if you're considering what variant to use for Gilgamesh, then you must have the Season Pass, because that's the only way to have Gilgamesh right now. So just play enough and you get this variant. I love that. I don't have to spend any Spotlight keys on it. I can't keep spending Spotlight keys on variants. It's not sustainable, but they keep releasing such cool variants. Anyway, it's an S tier. And our next Eternal we'll be taking a look at is Thena. Not Athena, Thena. I made that mistake multiple times before this card came out. I was like, oh yeah, you know, the Eternal season, these kind of like godlike characters. Athena. Nope, it's Thena. No A. I imagine it's based on Athena, right? It's just like a cool nickname. Don't call me Athena anymore. It's Thena now. But yeah, Thena here kind of gives me warrior princess vibes, kind of like Wonder Woman. I know, blasphemy, wrong universe, can't even say that name, but that's the kind of vibe that I'm getting from her, especially with all this armor. She feels very royal, very regal, and this is overall a very strong season for base cards, as you'll come to see. I really like a lot of the base cards for a lot of the new releases, but not really this one. This base card feels especially basic. She's hovering up there in the sky. That's all the background is, just sky, with her red cape. It's a nice enough cape, and her golden armor. That's my biggest problem here, is the armor, and overall her color scheme. I mean, I get it, she's got cool golden armor, but it's really gaudy to have that much gold, especially when she's also blonde, also kind of a golden color to her hair that does not stand out from the armor at all, and her weapon is the same gold as her armor, so that all kind of blends together. Nothing here stands out. I mean, sure, gold is a good highlight piece because it's bright and shiny, but when everything's gold, it just feels really tacky. That's a good word for it. It feels tacky, and I'm sure cool guy Thena over here would hate me for saying it, but yeah, no, I just really dislike her outfit, and I think the whole thing is just too much. So I'm gonna give Thena's base card a C tier. And then of course we have Thena's casual variant, and just like Gilgamesh's, it's fine. It's a different look at the character, a different outfit. I like this outfit more than her base card, you know, still keeping her golden colors, but now it's a bright yellow sweater and some nice pants with some golden bangles around her wrist, a red scarf instead of a cape. She still keeps a very regal posture and overall a very royal aesthetic, but you know, it's more casual. Wow, look at that. That's the name of the card type. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the casual variants just feel kind of lackluster to me. She's sitting there, drinking her tea in front of a little cafe. Wow! And I've talked before how it can be fun to see the characters kind of just chillin'. Again, I'll draw a comparison to Maria Hill's casual variant, but that one is a unique art style. She's doing something that's a little cute, you know, twirling her hair. There's a lot of personality there. I don't feel like there's as much personality here, and it doesn't feel as unique because it is the same artists as the base card. So it doesn't stand out as being especially different, and it's less exciting. I think all these casual variants are gonna fall about equal to me, and that's right around B tier, because they're all really just middle of the road, but in this case that does mean I like it more than the base card. But it doesn't really matter, because there's one more Thena variant that we gotta look at, and that is Francesco Tomaselli's Thena variant that was in the Spotlight caches, and this is the best Thena variant, and one of my favorite variants coming out this season. I spent Spotlight keys on this one because it just fixes all the problems I had with Thena's base card. Her armor is very similar in concept to the base card, but Francesco Tomaselli has found this excellent balance where it's still this gilded golden look while not feeling like too much. Her weapons, while still having gold accents, stand out and aren't just the same golden color as her armor. Something that's really impressive is that her hair, while still a very similar color to the armor, feels visually distinct because you can really tell that the armor is more of a metallic texture and then the hair feels more natural. And then you have this gorgeous background. I mean, it's a very simple background. It's just sky again, but the colors of the sky and the tree there, they are vibrant. Like, they do not need to be that vibrant, but I love that they are. It gives you a little something back there to look at, and doesn't take away from Thena, who is clearly the centerpiece. I mean, everything about her is just so eye-catching, and she's still got that regal appearance, and her cape is in tatters now a little bit, like she's battle-hardened, makes her feel like even more of a warrior. And then there's just the fact that she looks very beautiful in Francesco Tomaselli's art style. She's got so much presence, which can be a hard thing to capture, but she feels powerful and shiny and like a goddess, and you know, that's very appropriate for the Eternals. And Francesco Tomaselli's little white outline that he does fits here even better than Gilgamesh's because of how bright and shiny she is. I'm sure you could have guessed, but this one's definitely getting an S tier. And then we move on to Sersi, who appears to be the sorceress of the Eternals, and I mean, clearly she's magic. You know, green is the color of magic in Marvel. That's how it works. She joins all of our other magic green characters. Enchantress, Loki, the Hulk. Gamma radiation's basically magic, right? But yeah, Sersi definitely feels like the least trustworthy of the Eternals. I don't know if there's any basis in that, but if Disney's taught me anything, it's that characters with green smoke around them are definitely usually the bad guy, and they're gonna break out into some sort of villain song any second now. But I think this base card's really effective in the sense that I can look at it and make these little assumptions about Sersi and her personality. And that's the thing about base cards. What I get about the character from them doesn't necessarily have to be correct. I just like being able to look at the base card and get an idea about them. And then I can refine that idea later on. And she stands out so nicely. I mean, listen. Backgrounds don't get a lot more basic than this. It is just this sort of color. This sort of, what color is this? I don't know what to call it. It's not quite red. It's not quite pink. It's pinky red? She stands out nicely against it. If you're gonna go for a basic background, then make sure that it's at least effective in making sure your character is the center of attention. And she really is. If I had one little nitpick about it, it does suffer from facial features feel too big for her face syndrome. It's a thing that's happened for a few other cards, but I don't really have a term for it. But if you couldn't have guessed, it's when the facial features for the character feel a little bit too big for their face. I need a term for that. Anyway, it's a small thing, but I definitely think this is the best base card of the season so far. So I'm gonna give it an A tier. And then we have Sersi's casual variant, and this feels like even more of a letdown coming from such a strong base card. I mean, she's really just sat there reading? Reading, of all things. What is she, some kind of nerd? That's a weird insult coming from me. But like, oh, it doesn't get much more mundane than this. And yeah, it's still kind of eye-catching. I mean, her green sweater is nice. It keeps her color scheme, which I appreciate, but it's a less eye-catching green. It still stands out here, because everything else behind her is so plain, but that's not exactly a compliment. And even here, her facial features feel kind of big for her face. I don't know what it is about her specifically that keeps happening, but yeah, this doesn't feel substantially different than Gilgamesh's or Thena's. I mean, I think of all of them so far, Gilgamesh's has been my favorite, because it was a little bit funny, whereas Thena's and Sersi's here have just been like, here they are, doing a thing. So this one's also gonna get a B tier. And then we have Francesco Tomaselli's take on Sersi. And what's interesting about this variant is that this could almost be a casual variant. Her just kind of sitting, you know, her magic doing stuff over her head, but her not really engaged with it, just kind of glancing over her shoulder at it. You make a few tweaks to this setting and the angle and the concept, and this could totally be a very interesting casual variant, where she is still showing off her powers and what makes her unique without feeling like she's in the middle of combat, where she's just sitting casually. But this is just it's a very unique variant, and that's why I like it. This is not the sort of angle or pose we usually get for characters in general. The foreground is actually her magic, you know, transmuting the apples or whatever's happening here, and she's actually a little bit in the not quite the background, but in the middle. Weirdly, I don't know what that's called. The mid-ground? Sure. So I think I'm also gonna give this one an S tier. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, S tier's filled out. Whatever are we gonna do? We're gonna need a whole new tier list, and all these spots are going to waste. Well, don't worry. I usually have an idea of how much space I'm gonna need when I go into making these tier lists. This must just mean that the first time I looked at all these variants, I wasn't as impressed with whatever's coming up next, so don't worry. We'll make it fit. Next up, we have Makkari, who feels like the speedster of the Eternals. And more, I'm feeling like this group is just Marvel's Justice League. I mean, you got the big strong one, the Wonder Woman one, the magic-y one, the fast one. She's literally red like the Flash with lightning effects. Come on, how am I not gonna be like, oh, it's the Flash-like character? But that's fine, it's always cool to have these sort of archetypes that we can fit characters into. But maybe it does feel ever so slightly derivative. However, I'll forgive it because of how cool she looks. I mean, I love this perspective with her running straight at the camera. That was a brilliant move, as opposed to having her run left to right or getting some sort of angle. I love that she feels like she's coming right at you. And the background, again, just a color, sort of like purple, still feels pretty cool because it's like streaking past her. She feels fast, especially with all the lightning arcing off of her. It feels like she is just flying by. Like, she's moving so fast that no wonder you can't see what's around her. It's all a blur. It's an excuse for why there isn't really anything in the background, but again, it works. So Makkari's base card is also going to get an A tier. And I realized while looking at it that it says that she's a 3-3. She's a 3-4 now. She got buffed right before she came out. And Gilgamesh also received a buff. All of these graphics are out of date. He's a 5-9 now. I couldn't have expected that cards coming out this month were going to get a buff so fast, but pretend those numbers are the correct ones. And then we have Makkari's casual variant, and I think this is my favorite of the casual variants, but that's not saying much. And don't get me wrong, I am happy that they are releasing a line of variants with the new cards that you don't have to invest spotlight keys into. I mean, sometimes you just want a variant for the new card, and the only available one is in the spotlight caches. That sucks. So I'm glad that they were like, hey, let's pick a theme and release a line of variants for every new card. I just think that this particular theme isn't really my vibe. That being said, this one's definitely the most interesting. I mean, she stands out really nicely with her red highlights, and the setting is a little bit more interesting too. She seems to be in some sort of artifact room, sitting on a cool throne, examining a medieval helmet, some little goblets and treasure chests and trinkets all around her. I mean, it's not too much, but hey, it's something. I don't think it's doing quite enough for me to rate it on the same level as the base card, but it's definitely a high B tier. But still a B tier. Alright, that's pretty good. Now I just gotta go up, get the knee in there, hold it, yes, good. Oh, that went pretty well. Usually I fall down. I gotta be honest, I think this is Francesco Tomaselli's weakest variant of the month. It's doing exactly what I said I wouldn't have loved in the base card, a sort of side angle of her running. It makes her feel less fast, it feels less engaging. The blur effect in the background still works, I might even like it a little bit better here, but the colors used for the blur effect don't let her stand out as nice as that bright purple we had in the base card. We got oranges and reds, and I mean, her color is red, so yeah, she's not gonna stand out as nicely. Yes, to help out with that, we have Francesco's white line that he does around the characters, but it feels especially out of place here. Whereas in the other variants, it's subtle, kind of blends in, but helps them stand out without you even really noticing. Here, it is so noticeable. It feels like she is clip art, like she was cut out of a piece of paper with a little white outline and then pasted onto the background. It makes it all feel very disconnected. Plus, something about her facial features here, they just don't feel quite right. It feels like she's not really looking where she's going, or not quite thinking. I don't know, it's just something about the angle of her eye line just throwing me off a little bit. I think her outfit looks really good here. I like all the details about it, but she doesn't even have any cool lightning effects. Overall, everything here just feels like a step down from the base card. So I think I'm gonna have to give this one a C tier, which is lower than I usually put the spotlight variants, but those are ones that you're investing your valuable keys into. You want them to be really good, so it hurts a lot more if they're not. And finally, we've got Phastos, the Thor of the Eternals? I don't know what else to compare him to. He's a guy with a big hammer that's arcing electricity. That's Thor. I assume they have different powers and all sorts of different things about them, but how am I not supposed to look at this and think of Thor, you know? He just feels like another big strong guy for the Eternals, except he's got a hammer. Or maybe he's like the Paladin of the Eternals? Actually, that'll be fun. Real quick, I'm gonna go through each of the Eternals, and I'm gonna assign them a D&D class just based on vibe. So first, it's Gilgamesh, who's probably like a warrior, or maybe like a barbarian, you know, big and strong. And then it's Thena. Thena's probably the warrior. That makes sense to me. Then it's Sersi, and her magic feels a little bit more dark than a wizard's, so maybe like a warlock, although she's got a lot of like transmutation stuff going on, so maybe also like a druid could be, but like a scary druid. And then it's Makkari, who's fast. I guess rogues are pretty fast. Maybe she's like a rogue or a hunter or something. And then Phastos, who feels like a paladin. Yeah, that makes sense, right? I wonder if any of those comparisons are at all accurate to the actual roles they serve in the Eternals. In terms of being one of the cards in this game, which boils down to big guy with hammer, of which there are weirdly quite a few, I'd say this is definitely the best one. I mean, it definitely beats out Thor's. Thor's base card is very basic, but this he feels strong and powerful. There's so much lightning effect arcing from not just his weapon, but all over his body, and I love that effect when the lightning is like arcing out of the eyes. It just makes the character feel that much more godly, and again, that's very appropriate for the Eternals. His outfit and overall aesthetic feels a little bit more technologically advanced than the other Eternals. It's all these glowing red spots that make it feel like he's like nuclear powered or something. I don't know, but he definitely has all that presence and intimidation that I need from these characters that they're telling me are these strong, godlike figures. Now, I will say, I don't think I like this one quite as much as Makkari's, even though they're very similar, and that just boils down to color preference, if I'm being honest. I mean, Makkari's bright red and bright purple color scheme was really eye-catching. Here, the blue is nice, but it doesn't stand out very well on this kind of like weird grayish-green background. I wish that was a complementary color, like orange. I feel like that would make everything pop a lot better. But still, I think that this base card is very cool and very eye-catching. So this is going to be another base card in A tier. Like I said, it is a very strong month for base card art. Like, I'd be happy to use all of these cards' base variants for quite a while until other variants get released down the line. Especially when you compare it to stuff like this. I mean, how are we going to go from Phastos' base card art to this, where he's struggling to build furniture? He looks like me trying to build one of these IKEA shelves here. Like, he's lost all intimidation, and worse than the other casual variants, it looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. Sure, he's putting together furniture, but it's the confusion in his face. Yes, it's funny, but it also makes him feel less impressive, and that's not what I want out of my superheroes. Not to mention that this is the worst color scheme we've had for any of the casual variants so far. Sure, we've got the nice bright blue shirt that makes us know it's him, that's his color scheme, but everything else is brown and gray. I mean, it doesn't get much less visually interesting than that. It's just all so bland. Like I said, I'm so happy that they're putting the effort into making sure that there are variants available for all these new cards that you don't have to spend spotlight keys on. It gives players options for how to make their new cards look that doesn't take away their most valuable resources, and that's a good thing, which is why it pains me so much that none of the casual variants this season have really captured my attention at all. And this one especially. It commits the ultimate sin of not being bad. Like, a bad card could still be fun to look at. This one, it's just boring. So I think I'm gonna have to give this one a D tier. And the last variant for today is, of course, Francesco Tomaselli's Phastos variant. And this is a really nice variant. I mean, I love how his outfit looks here. His outfit looked pretty good in the base card too, but the things that really elevated the base card were the effects and his pose, whereas here, the outfit is also really nice to look at. I love this blue that Francesco uses. It's deep and dark, and it's just gorgeous. It meshes very well with the gold highlights of the armor. He's also changed the design of the hammer a little bit, made the handle blue, like his outfit, instead of gold like the rest of the hammer, which adds a little bit of visual contrast that I think goes a long way. And overall, I think I just like this design a bit better. It feels more hammer-like, you know? And you've even got the subtle electric effects going around the handle, but that's kind of it in terms of the electric effects. That's something that was a little bit of a letdown for this variant for me. I love how over-the-top the electricity looks in the base card. Here, you got a few little sparks, and that's it. It just draws the eye less. Speaking of drawing the eye less, he's not really doing anything here. They've tried to make it seem more interesting by putting it at this weird Dutch angle. The cool angles make sense when you've got like Spider-Man zipping through the city on the webs, and you gotta kind of keep up with him. He could be rotated at any angle, so it makes sense that the camera angle has to rotate with him. Here it's like, whoa, what is he doing? Well, he's standing there. We didn't need to get all crazy and tilted about it. The background is nice. I'd say it's actually the most interesting background we've had out of a lot of the cards. It feels like a city, maybe a little bit technologically advanced behind him, bathed in this orange light that lets him stand out. Hey, orange and blue, complementary colors. You love to see it. Art. But otherwise, I just wish he was doing more, you know? None of it looks bad by any means. It looks very good. It's just weird to see it look so good and still be not that interesting. So I think I'm going to give this one an A tier. I mean, it earns a higher ranking based on the cool art style alone. Francesco Tomaselli's art looks really gorgeous, but in terms of everything else that makes a card fun to look at and engaging, this one's definitely a step down from the rest of Francesco's work this season. And there you go, we've done it! We finished the Eternal season ahead of time, and what was that? What's that, viewer, who I can't actually hear, but I know what you're saying? Oh, I didn't talk about Ereshkigal, the card that everyone's the most excited for? Crap. This is a 5-week season. Oh, 5-week seasons always throwing me off my schedule, even more so than I already get thrown off my schedule. Yeah, I didn't have room for Ereshkigal here. These tier lists are really the perfect size for 4-week seasons, so I'm gonna include Ereshkigal in his own video when he comes out. He'll get his own focus, because everyone's gonna be really excited to talk about his variants, of which there are quite a few if I remember correctly, so don't worry, we will get to it, but hey, right now we're ahead of the curve. And that's something that doesn't usually happen. Now, let me get out of the way here and get rid of all these spares, and we'll wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Sorry that everything's been a little delayed, but we should be able to get back on track now. And make sure to comment below and let me know what your favorite variant from today's video was. And also just what card you're most excited for this season. For me, it's definitely Phastos. I'm so curious to see how he fits into my Silver Surfer decks. You know how I love Silver Surfer. And if you are having a good time, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss when the next video comes out. I wish I could give you an approximate date, but based on my track record, it could be any time at all, so it'll just be easier if you subscribe, and then you get a little notification when it happens. And so hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now, everybody. Have a nice day.